You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
On News Talk ZB, some incredibly sad news overnight with the passing of former All Blacks and Māori All Blacks halfback Sid Going at the age of 80. He passed away yesterday, surrounded by family, and will be laid to rest in Maramaku in Northland. This is from New Zealand Rugby. He represented the All Blacks from 1967 to 77, playing 29 tests and 57 games, including 5 as captain. New Zealand Rugby quoting Mark Robinson saying it's incredibly sad to hear of Sid's passing. He was a dynamic player and one of the greatest halfbacks in All Blacks history. Had immense pride in wearing the All Blacks jersey and representing New Zealand Māori, something which greatly endeared him to fans. Scott Robertson, All Blacks coach, said Sid was a special player and man in our game. He lit up the field with his ability and energy. He lit up people's hearts off it. That was his trademark. Sid Going, passing away at the age of 80.
French ball, but Barreau's in trouble here. They're really pushing him back. Look at the weight come in from the All Blacks again. Hurtling out of that one was Kirkpatrick. Ball on the ground. Meads, 10 yards from the goal line. Going dummy. He's having a dive. He's over. A try for Going in the 17th minute of the game. Going shooting across on the far side. Going round the side of the scrum and dotting down for a try.
Indeed, Sid Going there in, I think the test was against France, that clip we just played there. Phil Gifford documented his career with the written word and, of course, has written a number of rugby books through the years and a familiar voice with us here at News Talk ZB. He joins us on Weekend Sport now. Phil, thanks so much for your time. How are you?
Elliot, I'm very good indeed, thank you. I'm sorry that we're talking on a very sad occasion. One of the great people of New Zealand rugby, of course, Sid Going, passed away yesterday.
How will you remember Sid Going?
With nothing but affection and also so much joy that he brought to the rugby field, mate. I mean, I was lucky enough in 1972. I covered the whole of the Ranfurly Shield season. North Auckland had won it from Auckland and they lost it to Auckland at the end of that season. And during that time, I had the chance to watch Sid and his amazing brothers, Brian and Ken, because as a trio, Elliot, they were like the most brilliant magic act you've ever seen in your life. They had 30 named moves and they would use them all, triple, dummy, quadruple scissors, things, you know. And so that was one aspect of it. And the other thing about Sid as a halfback was that he was the most extraordinary runner with the ball. And because he was so incredibly strong. He was elusive as well, Elliot, but it was his strength that was the most extraordinary thing. And I saw him on numerous occasions, and he went on to do it, and he did it as well. He'd already done it, I should say, in Test rugby as well during 29 Test matches. He could knock over loose forwards that looked twice as big as he was because he was incredibly well built and incredibly strong, I should say. And that strength was completely just from DNA, mate, because I interviewed him when he retired and he sort of slightly shamefacedly admitted in 1977 he'd never been inside a gym in his life.
He was a real innovator, wasn't he? If you look at the way he played as a halfback and the running halfback that you touched on there, but he was an innovative number 9.
Yes, he really was. There was virtually nothing that he couldn't do. I mean, when they won the Ranfurly Shield in 72, he and his brother Ken had a big shouting match because Sid had tried a tap kick. It had gone wrong and Alan Watkins had scored a try for Auckland. And so when there was a penalty that gave North Auckland the chance to win the Shield at Eden Park, Ken said, "Oh, well, you wrecked the try. You kicked the goal." Sid said, "All right, I blinky well will," because he never swore because he was a very devout Mormon. He put the ball down and he blinky kicked it all right, and Northland won the Shield.
It was so important to that North Auckland as it was in those days, but the Northland community and I think there's still the billboard in Maramaku, representing him as well. But he was so beloved by that community and he loved it back.
Absolutely, Elliot. I mean, the thing about the bloke was that he was as humble as any rugby player I've ever met. But once he got on the football field, he had sublime confidence. And one of the things, again, going way back to 72 with him, I was a bit bemused as to how he was able, like I said, to knock over much bigger guys. And then after about the third or fourth game, it was very casual, press things in those days, and we just sort of tumbled, us media guys just tumbled into the changing shed. And I did an interview with Sid, and he was just wearing a pair of footy shorts. His upper body, mate, he was like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that obviously just came from farm work, Elliot. There was no pumping iron involved in that whatsoever, and so, but you're right, he was, and his All Black career was a bit stop-start because he was up against a really brilliant player for the number 9 jersey in Chris Laidlaw, who was much more orthodox, had a magnificent pass, and Chris Laidlaw's combination with Earl Curtin was very, very good. But just one thing that I really feel a wonderful chance that was missed, was that if there'd been an All Black coach that had the backbone and taken a massive punt of putting Sid's brother Brian at first 5 and Ken at fullback. Now, there were better individual first 5s than Brian, better individual fullbacks than Ken. But if you'd put the 3 of them together behind a powerful All Black pack, I think they would have revolutionised world rugby in the 1970s completely, and I think the All Blacks would have had some 50-point victories.
Wow. As you touched on there's all that perennial debate at the time around which halfbacks, but his legacy since he retired seems to have only grown, and his stature. Yeah. Where does he stand for you and Phil Gifford in terms of All Blacks halfbacks?
Well, I think the only All Black halfback, he's probably the only All Black halfback, and it's a bit unfair to compare amateur eras with professional eras, but in the amateur era, he was my number 1. And in the professional era, I think the all-round game of Aaron Smith, if I was, playing the game of the century and all the players were at their best form, I'd possibly have Aaron as my halfback, but Sid would be my reserve.
And as you touched on the innovation in his brothers, the triple scissors move is one that many remember. That's the kind of innovation you don't see too much in modern rugby, but I'm sure you didn't see it too much in the 1970s either.
No, you didn't, mate. They sort of stood alone. And they were also a godsend to headline writers because, of course, after one brilliant try that one of them scored, because it sort of varied from move to move, but they had a move called the special, which was, as you say, was a triple scissors and a couple of dummies thrown in as well, I think, in my memory. And there was one headline writer, and it was fairly obvious, but it was still very well done, and I can't remember which, might have been in the Herald, that said, going, gone. and that's how, Sid and his brothers, but Sid was always the figurehead and the most gifted, with all due respect to Ken and Brian, who were terrific footy players. But Sid was absolutely world-class, no question.
I just wanted to touch on the rivalry that he had in his battles, I suppose, with Gareth Edwards, the great Welsh and British and Irish Lions halfback, because they had some incredible matchups through their playing careers.
Yeah, they were slightly similar sort of footy players, weren't they? And so definitely you got when they played each other, it was extraordinary to watch. Sid. The 1972-73 tour of Great Britain and France that Sid was on, I think he might have been the vice captain to be in Kirkpatrick. That was, unfortunately, that wasn't the best tour because Keith Murdoch got sent home. There were divisions inside the team and so on and so forth. But and Sid also actually got criticised for what the British media saw as surliness. But for those of us that knew him, it was actually just shyness. He just didn't enjoy shooting his mouth off to strangers. But on the field, he was never less than massively competitive, as he was in every game of football that he ever played.
Yeah, an incredible loss for New Zealand rugby. It certainly is. Phil, appreciate your time and sharing those memories with us this afternoon on Weekend Sport.
My pleasure, Elliot. Take care, mate.
You too, Phil. Thank you very much for your time on Weekend Sport this afternoon.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.